When we maintain an open mind, we simply let the flow of information take its course, and our feelings will be responsible for letting us know whether something is right or wrong, without the need for immediate thoughts to intervene. Another characteristic of humanity is our impatience. Why do we almost always want to know or have everything immediately, without being willing to take the necessary steps before we can understand, possess, or see something? This impatience can hinder our own journey, halt our quest for answers simply because we grow weary of waiting, or become disappointed when things do not immediately meet our expectations. When something is difficult to understand, we often revert to what we do know and fall back on our old judgments. Many people seek support from others when things do not go according to plan, and they often do this by complaining and seeing themselves as victims. However, this is not the right approach. Old judgments are, in fact, old beliefs that have arisen from our previous experiences, and they belong in the past. A good example of this is not believing that a person can change over time. But how can we be sure that this is not possible? If we cannot comprehend that such a thing is possible, or if we cannot believe it, then we cling to our old judgment of a particular person, instead of making room for change and growth. We revert to what we know and trust, even if these judgments in the present are entirely incorrect and worthless. This is not a way to live in the moment. It is holding on to the past. Many people talk behind someone's back when they do not understand that person's behavior or words. Many employ this insecure method to find answers to their questions, which often stem from curiosity propelled by the human ego. Many seek feedback from others, hoping to share the same opinion with people who also do not understand, sometimes out of jealousy, or simply to gain attention and sympathy. And talking behind someone's back can cause a lot of harm, not only to the person being talked about, but also to the one who cannot keep their mouth shut. Karma is always lurking around the corner and will not hesitate to reflect negative consequences onto those who harm others. With the rise of social networks, we can judge 1,000 people within an hour. But what will be mirrored in our own lives? Will we then complain when others judge us? Of course, not everyone is like this. There are millions of people on this planet who have stopped engaging in pointless conversations about others, who have ceased wasting their time. Most of them are simply tired of the social games, the fake friendships, and the negativity that comes with it. Who wouldn't grow weary of something that constantly attracts negative emotions? If we all were to stop speaking from selfishness or fear, the world would already look much better within a few days. Stupidity fades once we realize we no longer need it, and we can start by paying it no more attention. People who are aware of the real issues on this planet often don't focus as much on small personal matters. That doesn't mean they don't care at all, but they understand that the root cause behind these minor issues usually goes much deeper than what the average person can comprehend. Every problem has a deeper cause, just like our bad behavior is not solely attributed to our parents or our education system. The real problem started centuries ago, but that doesn't mean we can't change our mindset from today onward, or that it's nature's fault. Once we become aware, we can no longer be manipulated unless it's with something entirely new, or through a hefty dose of projected fear. But once we understand the rules of the game, once everything becomes clear and visible to us, we will no longer believe everything politicians, teachers, or parents tell us or instruct us to do. This is true freedom. Freedom of thought means believing something when it feels right and true to believe it, when we deeply know that the truth is being spoken. If something doesn't feel right, we understand that something is amiss. Life will let us know if we are on the right track, and it's up to us to listen to our emotions. Times are changing drastically, and it's even possible to question authority now. This might sound normal today, but it wasn't always the case. It's not because authorities allow us to do this, but because we simply can. They can't control everything. Thanks to the internet, we can now share our personal beliefs, ideas, opinions, and accumulated knowledge with the entire world without leaving our homes, but they, of course, try to restrain it. Yet few people worry about being monitored and assessed by national security agencies anymore. It increasingly stops us from doing what we want, and this is progress. Sharing an opinion on a certain taboo subject was hardly possible in the past. If we look at our history books, we clearly see that many people were punished for sharing new knowledge, for questioning authority, for challenging religion, for choosing science over religion, even if people gave the slightest impression that they were different or didn't fit the mold. Women were even burned at the stake because they were different or peculiar. These women were labeled as witches only because others didn't understand their way of life and never made an effort to understand it. This reminds us of contemporary bullies who target the easiest victims, the quiet and different individuals who are usually warmer than most people. If human strength were measured by physical power, the use of reptilian brain functions, or having the loudest voice, then we would be nothing more than a bunch of shouting animals trying to scare others away by making noises or looking tough. We consider ourselves the most intelligent beings on this planet, so why isn't mental strength the primary power of our species? It's easy to understand that people were once afraid to voice their opinions, to stand up, to question authority, to protest, and much more that could cause problems in their lives. The majority of people were taught to listen to those in control. They had to do so because of the consequences. If they didn't, it was normal for them to feel small, weak, and powerless within the system, at the bottom of the pyramid. People knew that certain actions or verbal expressions could cost them their lives. They had to be careful about what they said and did. Throughout history, thousands of people have been killed for questioning the authenticity of a religion, the existence of God, even for doubting small parts of a religious story. What most people don't understand is that this form of fear associated with these cruel acts was passed down from generation to generation, from parents to children, over and over, seemingly unnoticed. There was no psychology or personal development. There was almost no available knowledge that allowed people to understand more about their personal power, thoughts, emotions, or health. Not a decade has gone by without a war that has affected thousands of people, so it's understandable that small or large emotions of fear were passed down to children and grandchildren during these times of global depression. It's actually the transmission of emotions that has shaped our entire society. Fear from the past still lurks in the collective mind of our species. We haven't completely shaken it off. Humanity continues to create new problems, more misery and more wars, although many people are overcoming their personal fears thanks to new discoveries and new knowledge found on the internet. However, there are still many people who are stuck with these old, unwanted emotions from previous generations, not knowing how to remove them from their bodies using their minds. Today, science is making significant strides. Scientists and researchers of all kinds are fully committed to understanding how harmful negativity and fear truly are, and to what extent they impact our human body and health. We can only hope that in the coming months and years, even more important insights will be revealed. It is crucial that knowledge has the opportunity to spread worldwide rather than being suppressed or kept secret. But that is a whole different topic. Fear passed down by older generations can be seen as part of our heritage. It's given to us for a reason, even if we inherit a list of worries, doubts, and wrong judgments. It's actually an opportunity for life to overcome these negative thoughts and emotions. We already live in a time where conflicts are normal, so why not try for a complete transformation? Could it be that the real reason we are faced with these challenges is our evolution? Are old fears and mistakes truly necessary to change human behavior? In my opinion, yes. Once we know what we don't want, we can change. It's like opening a bank account or collecting our salary. We need to take a few steps to be rewarded, even if it means doing things we may not necessarily feel like doing. Chapter 7. Our Society. For thousands of years, people were controlled by a small group of elites, notably royal families, politicians, generals, dictators, and various leaders. These individuals not only dictated how others should behave and what they should think, but also what was allowed and not allowed. Asking questions to these presumed leaders was often discouraged, and people were aware of the potential consequences. While there has been little change in some areas, such as physical punishment in the military for those who don't obey, society itself has changed. Laws are now used to punish those who do not conform to certain behavioral standards, those who challenge the status quo, those who do not act according to prescribed rules. We should not be like sheep, controlled and led by sheepdogs. Although we have done that for a long time, that is now changing. We are not animals. The only animals are those who try to control the lives of others to gain more power or profit. The game itself has never changed. Only the rules have been adjusted. People are still controlled, or perhaps we would say brainwashed, by a small group of individuals. The big difference today is that we all have the opportunity to seek answers for ourselves. We literally have the ability to pursue truth and justice. With the internet, we can do research, share opinions, consider other viewpoints, debate, and more, without causing harm to others. We are no longer limited to the limited amount of information presented by mainstream media because, let's be honest, what we are served as news on a daily basis is only a fraction of what is really happening in the world. But who selects the news presented to us? Now, we have the ability to decide for ourselves what we want to believe, because we can find alternative stories, facts, and answers. We now have the freedom to choose whether we want to accept everything others tell us, or whether we want to seek information ourselves. We can find facts, evidence, and proof for ourselves, instead of waiting for others to do it for us, instead of relying on television programs that program information into our brains. It's sad but true that the game is still ongoing. Global manipulation of people remains highly effective when we look at our surroundings. If we dare to open our eyes, we must acknowledge that some people more often resemble zombies than intelligent beings who have the power to reclaim their freedom, rights, and their own minds and thoughts. Manipulation is not limited to the media, governments, or financial institutions. The problem is much more extensive than that. While mainstream media bears most of the responsibility for mass manipulation by implanting collective ideas in people's minds, there are also other influences, such as education and the school system. As mentioned earlier, when incorrect or incomplete information is passed down from generation to generation, without questioning the authenticity or truth of that information, we simply create a new generation of ignorant and misinformed individuals. This type of education leads to people who think they know everything there is to know. Spreading incorrect information can happen intentionally, but it can also stem from ignorance. Teachers continue to pass on the same knowledge to children year after year, often unaware of new theories or knowledge that could challenge the previous information. For example, children are still taught that the pyramids were built to bury pharaohs, while in recent years, at least 10 new theories have been proposed that could provide a better explanation for the existence of these extraordinary structures. It is often assumed that school textbooks contain reliable information, because schools would not allow subpar teaching materials. In reality, much of the information in textbooks has been passed down without authenticity for years, as if the true source or value of that information no longer matters. It is crucial to stop the spread of incorrect or incomplete knowledge, especially when it comes to old theories that can easily be contradicted by new insights or scientific discoveries. There is no reason to fill people's minds with information that lacks evidence, facts, truth, or solid proof, especially when it comes to educating children. People who still have old school textbooks would do well to take a look at them. How would you feel if you failed a test back then when the teacher's lesson turned out to be completely incorrect? Haven't we wasted a lot of time learning the wrong things? Unfortunately, speculation and outdated beliefs have become the norm in today's education, and that's not how we should be teaching children. If teachers and students refuse to question the authenticity of information, then we are simply creating a new generation based on ignorance. Teachers often have their own way of teaching, and students are told that teachers know what is right and what is not. If teachers or the authors of textbooks fail, then the students fail as well. It's sad that children can fail and be expelled from school because they couldn't memorize the same incorrect information. Isn't it one of the main reasons why many students, for example, dislike history lessons? How would parents feel if scientists discovered that children can intuitively sense certain knowledge as incorrect? What if intuition is real, and children, from their subconscious, know that they don't need to remember incorrect or irrelevant information for our evolution? What if we can intuitively feel certain things, similar to how a dog can sense fear? What if mainstream science comes up with such a theory in a few years and proves it? If that turns out to be true, many children would have failed for nothing in school. They would have failed for nothing in the eyes of our school system and our society. And that's unacceptable. On television, we see the same scientists over and over again, as if only a few of them are allowed to present us with the truth. There are thousands of scientists and researchers who have found new clues, theories, and evidence for a greater truth. But why don't they get the chance to share their newly discovered information on television? It's very understandable that people start talking about conspiracies because something suspicious is definitely going on. It's clear that certain information is being suppressed. It's also easy to understand that new forms of energy are being hidden until this secrecy no longer benefits certain organizations, oil companies, or governments. We have seen this behavior throughout human history. It is once again only a small group of elites that controls the flow of information and resources. The only knowledge presented and highlighted is the information we are allowed to see. Knowledge that has been carefully selected. Wouldn't it be unjust if whistleblowers who tell the truth risked a lifetime in prison just because they stand up for the truth and want to stop the many lies and secret agendas? Isn't this wrong, or has the world gone mad? We can wonder if people have been deliberately made addicted to cigarettes, alcohol, or drugs, so that certain organizations can gain more control over people in the future by demanding higher taxes and prices, while people continue to need and become more dependent on these substances. We can even question how diesel cars were promoted for years. Oil companies will try to continue making profits from oil until there is no more oil. Only then will they promote a new form of energy from which they will also profit. The first car that ran on water was built over 60 years ago, but where is this technology? Why don't we see it on the streets? Meanwhile, we are already traveling through space, but we still haven't found a way to improve that car that ran on water. We are still dependent on oil, which happens to be the main thing that the truly powerful people have in common. Fortunately, we are freeing ourselves from this ignorance. A lot is being organized behind the scenes, and we are starting to see that. Truth can only be hidden for a while, but not forever. If wars are started for the sake of money and oil, that secret cannot be kept. The secret is too big. Eventually, we will discover the truth. If it turns out that millions of people have been killed because of oil, people will realize how little our governments really care about us, the citizens. For some on this planet, profit is more important than peace, harmony, and even evolution. If you can walk on this planet and buy anything you want, why would you want our current world to change? Why would you give others the chance to evolve when you are already at the top and richer than others? That's what the elite at the top of the pyramid really do and think. We are taught to look up to people who have made it in their lives. People who have built successful businesses, celebrities, politicians, people who have worked their whole lives and so on. Some of us even like to admire royal families who didn't have to do anything to become who they are today. Is that normal? But what if we are looking at the wrong kind of people? What if we are embracing the wrong examples? If we were to follow people who actually understand life, how important our human emotions are, and how precious life truly is, wouldn't that be better for our long-term future? Or do we prefer to idolize the people that mainstream media tells us to idolize? It's always the same story. A small group of people controls the collective consciousness of the masses. But fortunately, we are heading for a change. It's frustrating to think that the knowledge passed down from generation to generation is based on fear, old beliefs, and wrong judgments. Until a few years ago, it was difficult to find alternative information about the human mind, knowledge about how to raise children, information about government cover-ups, health issues, ancient wisdom, and so on. People were far from aware of the true human capabilities, the real power hidden within our minds, the cycles and balanced structure of life, the emotional frequencies around us, the pain and sorrow we must accept to move forward, and much more. We have come a long way to get where we are today, but the road to paradise on earth has finally opened, and it's up to us to take the right direction. Our history and our personal mistakes teach us something. It makes us realize that we haven't fully lived the life we could have lived so far. But there's no one to blame. It's all part of the structure of life. We had to be ignorant to become wise. How could people in the past be aware of the opinions of others if they didn't dare to speak out in public because they were too afraid of being ridiculed or feared, being watched by those they fear? We should never blame our parents for anything, because every challenge in our life offers us a new opportunity, something to overcome. If we didn't have challenges in our lives, then we wouldn't have a reason to be here. We wouldn't have a purpose at all. Parents are just another group of people who, in many cases, unintentionally pass on wrong ideas to their children, even if they believe they are doing the right thing and acting out of a deep sense of love. When parents say that we should be careful, it usually stems from genuine concern, but this doesn't mean they aren't conveying some form of fear. The words they speak are still based on the positive emotion of love, but the idea they are sharing can invoke a negative emotion of fear in the child, rather than the positive feeling of love that the parents intended. This is an example where people say, well-intentioned things but actually plant ideas in someone's head. In the child's mind, this thought can evoke a negative emotion instead of the love the parents meant to convey. We are also not always aware of the long-term effects of our words on a person's life. When fear is repeated over and over, it leads to new rituals and beliefs based on that form of negativity. We often forget that knowledge can also be transmitted without harming the emotional state of others. This is called explaining. We should not force others to feel a certain emotion just because we feel that way about something, just because we have learned to think and act in a certain way. The fact that we fear something does not mean that others should experience the same fear. Life should not revolve around spreading fear. Instead, we should strive to pass on courage and emotional strength because that's what we lack today. Parents want the best for their children. But why should we give our children the idea that life is difficult, dangerous, or that surviving in the world is a challenge? Some parents even teach their children that it's wrong to be honest with others, that no one can be trusted, that money is evil, that they can't start their own business, or that it's impossible to go off the beaten path. When it comes to this sensitive topic of parenting, we shouldn't point fingers because we can't blame anyone, not even our great-grandparents. It's just a fact that we can't teach others what we haven't been taught ourselves. We can only share what we know, and we can't pass on what we lack or what we ourselves suffer from. It's not our grandparents' fault that they grew up between two world wars, nor is it the fault of the generation before or after them. It's up to us to recognize, analyze, and learn how to control the unwanted emotions in our lives. That's the way to eventually get rid of them if they no longer serve us. All these words may seem far-fetched to some, but it's important to look at life from different perspectives, to have divergent opinions, and to develop a personal way of thinking. This isn't necessarily wrong. It's what propels us forward. Something drives humanity to progress, just as something enables us to change our behavior and make our lives more beautiful and relaxed. Just as we all want to improve our personal lives, there are people who want to improve our entire society, not just our small personal world. I'm one of those people who used to be afraid of being ridiculed or judged by others, but now I don't care anymore. For a long time, I thought it was a weakness to care too much about others and to be as sensitive as I was. But now I see it differently. Being sensitive to emotional frequencies can actually be a strength rather than a weakness. It allows us to recognize emotions, learn from them, and be aware of our feelings. It can even alert us to danger and let us feel when someone is lying. If someone loves what I've written in this book, I'm happy. If someone laughs at what I've written, I'll do my best to stay happy. That's the reason I'm on my personal development journey. I know it's part of the process, and I need to experience both emotional states. I also know that every new discovery goes through a period of denial, so I'm just trying to relax and enjoy the journey. Finally, someone who mocks others will ultimately be repaid by karma. We all have our own beliefs, ideas, and thoughts. But when we realize that some collective thoughts harm us on a large scale, we might consider working together as a species to remove this burden from our shoulders. Thoughts that produce unwanted experiences for all of us. On the other hand, if humanity hadn't made a mess of this planet, we wouldn't have been able to learn from our mistakes and wouldn't have known what we truly want and who we really are. It's amazing to see that everything on this planet and in the universe is perfectly in order when we look at the bigger picture. Maybe it's not all as bad as we think. We can only be who we want to be if we also dare to experience that what we don't want to be. Tim Impens. How realistic are we when we think that 80 or 90% of our brains, which we don't use, are there for no reason? Isn't that a bit naive? Most of our brains are inactive, and do we really think that this is normal? If every cell in the human body has a purpose for being there, why would this significant and intelligent part of our brains mean nothing? The same applies to our ability to visualize, which is an amazing feature of our human body. Are we going to continue to see this magical power as just something that's there, an unimportant feature of our body, or a mistake made by nature itself? And how realistic are we when we think we know everything about ourselves? Many people think and behave this way, while most of us can't even fully control our own thoughts and emotions. It's actually quite ironic. Is humanity really continuing to speak from this arrogant place called ego? Only a small percentage of the people walking on this planet have had the courage to leave their comfort zone, and an even smaller percentage have had the courage to confront all their personal fears. So why are there so many people who are full of themselves and pretend to completely understand life? Fortunately, there are at least as many people awakening as there are people stuck in an illusion. We see a significant divide forming between those who awaken and those who want to continue living in a world of ignorance and obedience. Again, the balance is there. Positive experiences are never created by spreading fear or speaking from ego. It's time for us to realize that. Life is about experiencing frequencies of love, honesty, happiness, trust, peace, relaxation, and so on. But to experience that, we also have to go through a period of darkness, which is meant to be temporary, just long enough to allow us to appreciate the opposite emotions. All life needs light, not darkness, so there's no reason to stay there. There are so many other beautiful emotions that give us the ability to create joyful experiences in our future, both on a personal and collective level. All we have to do is choose them. Change comes with difficulties. If we were to want to reform the entire school system tomorrow, we would face many challenges. But isn't this struggle or darkness ultimately worth it? The problem with the world is that the intelligent people are full of doubts, while the stupid ones are full of confidence. Charles Bukowski. This book not only describes the physical reactions and consequences created by our thoughts, but also delves into the hidden knowledge behind the creative process, the structure of this creative power that can be seen as the missing puzzle piece, the spiritual aspect of the human body. For some of us, there has been an experience where a certain emotion couldn't be expressed in spoken or written words. Such an experience should make us realize the true power of our emotions, instead of ignoring them. Emotion is the original language we are born with, whether we realize it or not. We aren't born with verbal words. We give words meaning based on emotions. We have become so detached from our origin that we often don't even realize whether something is good for our body or harmful to it. Our thoughts have taken over our emotions, while emotions were set aside long ago. It's precisely this behavior that has caused many problems in the world, because we are focusing on the wrong things instead of trying to reach a higher level and see the bigger picture. We need to acknowledge that we have misunderstood the story of humanity so far. If we truly want to know who we are, we need to raise our level of consciousness. Solutions to our global problems can never be found if we continue to walk around with our eyes closed. If we don't recognize that we've gone off course, and if no one finds the courage to do something about it, the future doesn't look bright. Looking at our world today, we see all sorts of problems, even problems leading to major revolutions and riots in the streets. Financial crises, political games, mass manipulation, pollution, lack of knowledge, arrogance, jealousy, and prevailing ignorance are the most common issues in the world. It's time to deal with them because these problems have served their purpose. We have done nothing for too long and let everything happen, but now we are awakening in large numbers. The two main problems that have brought us to where we are now are mass manipulation and the human ego. Most of our behavior stems from these two. The ego denies anything that doesn't sound acceptable or doesn't fit into our old beliefs and judgments. Manipulation keeps us within that field of ignorance. The ego doesn't allow the replacement of old beliefs with new ones and tries to defend our own beliefs, while manipulation ensures that we stay in line. This is why history repeats itself. This mentality leads to ignorance or weakness, anything but harmony or peace. We've waited long enough. It's time for every individual to assert their right to live before it's too late. People who think they are already living in freedom lack the insight or power to imagine a world without the problems we see every day. We cannot live in an artificial and controlled world. We've already tried that, and it didn't work. We've already attempted to live unconsciously according to rules written by someone else, and that didn't work either. Now, it seems like the energy surrounding our planet is trying to awaken us and make us aware of who we are. Perhaps the Mayans were right after all. Maybe the shift is happening right before our eyes without us knowing it. Maybe the calendar did end in December 2012. Maybe the cycle is complete. We may be witnessing the beginning of a new era right now. There is certainly a lot happening on this planet lately. Thoughts create emotions. Emotions create reality. Tim Impens. It is essential that we take control of our own thoughts, and become aware of our emotions, because both thoughts and emotions are responsible for both positive and negative experiences in our lives.